to start with Dan because you were on our preview show yesterday, and you said it would be a victory for Scott Walker in the debate if he didn't make a headline. So did he take his advice a little too seriously, or what was your sense of how he did?
My sense, well, first of all, it's you listened to what I said yesterday.
Of course.
But my impression was that they were very concerned that he would make a bad impression or make a mistake, and as a result, they ended up leaving almost no impression. He disappeared for large parts of the debate, and I think he came off of the 10 as the most overly scripted of the candidates.
All right, we're going to show on the screen now a couple measures of that, sort of fading into the background of how much time everyone had on the screen. So on the list here, Scott Walker came in 9th out of the 10, ahead of only Rand Paul. And so Scott Walker had about 5 minutes, 43 seconds by this measure, roughly half of what Donald Trump did and behind everybody else. And there are two other measures I pulled out after looking at some of the things from last night. One was the percentage of the conversation on Twitter. So this was measuring who's talking about Scott Walker, I guess positively or negatively, and he again he's in the eighth spot with about 6% of the tweets mentioning one of the candidates, whereas Donald Trump, as you might expect, was at the top. Again, Marco Rubio and Chris Christie were below Scott Walker. And finally, this was another kind of fun way to look at it, was just how many people grew Twitter followers during the debate, and Scott Walker fared a little better there, so he added about 6,000 followers. Ben Carson was way at the top with 24,000, so people may not have known much about him before the debate.
What was amazing is Scott Walker loves to talk, but he never made it to the bell on any question that he was asked. So he didn't use the time. Everybody else used their time and then went over. He never did that, and it was just surprising because I think he had certain points he was going to make. He made them, and then he stopped. And to many people, I think it was pretty noticeable that that was the plan.
Right, I guess the word for economical presentations. Let's ask Mary first and then Patrick. What was your general take on Scott Walker and how he did?
Yeah, I agree with Dan on that. He talked about wanting to relax before the debate, and maybe he relaxed a little too much. He did really fade into the background. I don't think it was about 15 minutes before he uttered a word, and when he did, it was maybe less than 40 seconds. And I think in the first half hour, he spoke for about 40 seconds total.
And then the first hour is a minute 54.
Right.
So, but
less than 6 minutes the whole time.
But it's not just about the quantity. He didn't have much to say that was memorable. He had the one line about Hillary Clinton and her emails that ended up getting some attention. But beyond that, and beyond that, he didn't have much to say that was memorable. It was, in general, I think, a pretty forgettable performance. He didn't say anything that we remembered in a bad way or in a good way.
That said, he's been polling well, so I think their strategy was don't come off as a jerk, don't screw up, and I guess in that way he succeeded.
Yeah, let's go to Patrick and Madison to get his take. Now, the format, of course, plays a role in this because you can't, if you're constantly jumping in, you look like you're butting in and you're having a problem. But how did you think he did, Patrick, in terms of sort of the substance when he did get a chance to answer questions?
Well, I mean, he answered the questions that were put to him, and he did it in a very tight way. I agree that he got overshadowed during much of the debate. And the other thing that I think is interesting, on that list of who spoke most and least, Walker was 9th out of 10. I was surprised to see Rand Paul spoke a minute less than him, but Rand Paul really made an impression, mostly because he was being combative and calling himself a different kind of Republican and sort of taking on Chris Christie and Donald Trump. Walker didn't leave those kinds of impressions. He did, he did talk about issues, but he easily faded into the background.
But I disagree with Patrick on one point. He didn't answer some of the questions. Megyn Kelly's question about abortion and why he believes that there shouldn't be an exception for the life of the mother, he didn't address that question, and she didn't follow up on that. And I would actually like to hear the answer to that question. And then there was the question about the other country. What was the
other countries in the Middle East?
Estonia?
Yeah, and he again didn't come up with a country in response to the question. He was prepared for the question about the economy and why he didn't create a 250,000 jobs, but on those other ones, I think he had his points. He made his points, and even the point about Hillary Clinton was not in direct response to the question that was asked.
Right. Let's show that one now, because we've got that one on tape. That was probably his sort of most memorable zinger in the debate, and clearly one he sort of had in his back pocket going forward.
What would you do if Russian President Vladimir Putin started a campaign to destabilize NATO allies Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, mirroring the actions Putin took at the early days of Ukraine?
Well, first off, for the cyber attack with Russia the other day, it's sad to think right now, but probably the Russian and Chinese government know more about Hillary Clinton's email server than do the members of the United States Congress. And
so that one struck me anyways like a case where he's got the talking points in his head, and he sort of went back to grab that one and pull it in, and he came off a little less conversational, maybe a little less authentic than some of the others who might have had similar talking points, but they seem to be presented in a more natural way.
I think he went to that one. He obviously had it in the hopper, but I think it stressed his message that he was going after Hillary Clinton. He wasn't going to get sucked into the fray of fighting with Donald Trump or fighting with Chris Christie, but he was going to focus on the Dems. So I think that's why he pulled it out.
I mean, she's not there, so you can beat up on her, and you know, eventually he's going to have to make the case as to why he is the candidate who should be elected as opposed to the other 9 people on the stage, or Carly Fiorina, or whoever else might end up being there.
Yeah, well, again,
scripted.
We're talking a lot, of course, about how the style of it and how it came off. Was there anything that we heard substantive in terms of policy points or things? When there was the bit about the NATO countries and Russia and things. Is there anything, Patrick, did you catch anything when you were writing this story that you felt like here's actual news from the governor that helps clarify his position on anything?
No, I don't think that he said anything new that he hasn't said before. If you've been following him, if you've been watching his stump speeches, everything he said was in line with those. I don't think there was a single, point that he made that he hasn't made in the past. And that was by design. He's trying to introduce himself to voters who don't know him as well and deliver that message. He's very disciplined, and he tried to get his points across.